All right. Welcome to another edition of Shabbat Lounge. This is Matt
And Jake here.
coming to you with another Torah portion. This is what, Jake?
This is week 25. This is Tzav, which means command. And it's Leviticus 6 through 8, verse 36.
All right, now this one's pretty short. It's just basically 2 chapters, a little bit. So it doesn't take us very long to get through this, but
Right.
hopefully we give you some things to think about. And once again, we encourage you to read the text. Don't take our word for it. So, Jake, what is
Yeah, we could be wrong.
That's right. We definitely could be wrong. So what does this start with here?
So this is about keeping that fire burning continually. Is kind of where it takes off. So spiritually in our hearts, being priests, the fire of Yah is to burn continually, steadfastly doing the word of Yah.
What do you think it means they're doing the word of Yah?
Well, usually when I think of doing the word of Yah is, well, first the word has to be in my heart, because that's usually how it says it in Scripture. It says the word will be in your heart so that you will do it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I think of first. And the word of Yah being the Torah.
Yeah.
It's also the prophets.
Yep.
It's also the New Testament stuff.
Yep.
Quote
Very
unquote.
good.
So having Messiah in your heart, right? Continually walking as he walked. So that's kind of the goal.
Yeah. Very good. Well, the fire was to never go out. And so we have to keep watch. And if you were to fall asleep, the high priest could sneak up on you like a thief in the night. So, Jake, have you ever heard this story about the thief in the night and the high priest?
I have, on this very channel.
Oh, you have?
Yes.
And
we did use the Nacho Libre thing.
Yeah, I think we did.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So if you missed it, go back and watch that one also. Yeah. But tell the story.
So it was this concept of, if you were high priest, you had to take turns, staying up with the fire. Just like in the old westerns, they you got to keep one eye open. We need one guy to stay watch, while the rest of us sleep. And you didn't want to be that guy that fell asleep. And but that concept was not new. The priest had that same thing. They had to stay up all night to make sure the fire stayed lit. And it was serious, because of this commandment. You didn't want to be the guy that, let the fire go out. I mean, that would not be a good place to be.
Right.
And you definitely would not have your job anymore. And you might, you didn't want to find out if that meant you were dead.
Right.
So they had to stay up all night.
So when this thief in the night sneaks up on the priest that falls asleep on watch, what happens?
So the high priest, this responsibility fell on him. And so he took it very seriously, and he would have to check on this from time to time, and especially if there's a new kid on duty, or or maybe an old guy, and he would stroll through, and if he found them asleep, he would throw hot coals on their garment, and it would basically catch on fire, and that's how they would wake up. And he would surprise them like a thief in the night.
That's a fine how do you do.
And they would run out of the place yelling and screaming, probably, and on fire. And eventually, they might be naked by the time they got to the end. And so there's a lot of references about that. And so I do believe that I've borrowed that heavily from Monty Judah and Lion and the Lamb Ministries, but you can find a lot of things about that online if you look it up.
Well, eventually, right, once your clothes burn up, you're bearing the shame of your sin of letting the fire go out.
Yeah, everybody knew by then.
Yeah,
that you can't hide it.
Hey, why is that naked guy running through camp?
You woke up the whole camp, and especially all the Levites. They're like, "What's going on?" Yeah. He fell asleep. Oh no!
Again.
Yeah.
It's always the same guy.
Yeah.
That Jerry. Every time.
Every time he's on duty. So we got to keep watch. We don't want to fall. We don't want to be found sleeping when our high priest comes again.
Right. And I think another thing important about this, keep the fire lit, keep the fire going thing, is you see Paul talk about, run the race
Hmm.
to the end, right? And you
Yeah.
see it talks about the falling away at the end, and you see it in, we're doing a study through Judges right now, but and you're watching these guys just, and they go and they go and they're on the right track, and then right at the end, they kind of mess things up, and it's like it's important to run the race to the end. It's keep that fire lit
Yeah.
till the end,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's hard. It's not easy. It takes a lot of active, just like it took a lot of active work to keep a fire going. That means, it wasn't just like they had to stare and watch the fire, but they had to go get wood. They had to poke it and mess with it. And,
Yeah.
if you've ever kept a fire going,
It would be an easy job to fall asleep at.
yes. It's not, it's like watching paint dry kind of. It's soothing. It's warm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It would be
Kind of
very
like
easy.
sin.
Kind of dim.
It's like, it's interesting too, because
Yeah.
so I've always heard, I don't remember where I heard this before, but it was that sin is like peeing your pants. At first, it's nice and warm and comfortable because now you're not under all that pressure, and then eventually it just gets cold and sticky.
That's gross.
I know, right?
You have a lot of experience with this, do you?
Not really, but
Okay.
I could. I mean, who doesn't, Matt?
Yes. Bring back warm childhood memories for me.
Yes. So at first,
it's one way to warm up on a cold Pennsylvania morning.
Exactly. At first, it's nice, and then eventually, it's terrible. You see how terrible it really that decision was.
Yes, for sure. All right. Well, moving on. So in Revelation 6:15, you've got this other principle.
16:15.
16:15. Yes.
You're all about changing that to 6.
Yeah. About keeping the fire burning. In Romans 12:1-2 is about living sacrifices, and this idea of our prayer and study like an offering to Yahuwah.
Right. So we get a lot of, well, if you're going to keep the Torah, keep the law, why, you have to do the sacrifices and stuff like that. So what we'll find in Leviticus is that it's not common man offering sacrifices. There's specific people, specific places for these sacrifices to be done. And just like you're not a policeman, you don't go pulling everyone over when they break the law, right?
Right.
Same kind of deal here. But we see in other places throughout Scripture that, our sacrifices and offerings are prayer and study, right? We're sacrificing our time and our desires to be more into what Yahweh wants than what we want, right? And I also kind of look at the prayer part of it as, right? It talks about not bringing a blind sacrifice. And so I tell my kids, I say, that means when you're praying, pay attention to what we're doing and be on the same page with us. Don't make your sacrifice of prayer this blind sacrifice where it doesn't mean anything. Be there. Otherwise, you're not sacrificing anything. You're just still having your own fun.
Yeah, that's good. Just going through the motions.
Right.
All right, so in 1 Corinthians 10:14, don't mix the holy with the profane. And in Mark 12:38-32, there's this concept of being a perpetual fire at all times, be a living sacrifice. So what did you take from that, especially there in Mark?
Okay, so for the Mark verse, I thought was kind of interesting. He's talking about, this is where he brings up the 2 great commandments. But he also, at the end of that little discussion there, he says in verse 32, he talks about, he prefers you to be that, love your neighbor as yourself, and he prefers that to burnt sacrifices.
Yeah.
So he prefers, just like he says in 1 Samuel 15, He prefers obedience to sacrifice. He'd rather Saul had been obedient than to have to offer sacrifice later for his disobedience.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things that I think, to me, was a big deal about coming to Torah was finding that in my Christian walk, I was leaning so heavily on the sacrifice that I was neglecting the obedience part, right? So we have the sacrifice of Messiah, but are we going to lean on it as like, well, that's a given. I have that, so I don't have to be obedient because I have the sacrifice. He prefers obedience. You have the sacrifice to cover when you fall. Is more the point he's trying to make there.
Well, and in that scripture too, and you think about loving your neighbor, it is a sacrifice, to love your neighbor. It's not something that is easy, and it requires time, effort, and energy on your part to actively do that.
Right.
So it's more than just giving lip service, saying "No, I love you, man." I mean, it means you go help the neighbor, and you get your hands dirty, and you share the burden with them, kind of thing.
Are you trying to say that being my friend is a very hard sacrifice that you're making?
No.
Okay. It could be. I wouldn't blame you for saying that. Oh, go back real quick. I just want to make a point on this 1 Corinthians thing too. This don't mix the holy with the profane.
Oh yeah.
It's the same thing he says in Exodus, and where he talks about don't worship their gods the way, don't worship Yahweh the way that the Egyptians worship their gods.
Yeah, because that Corinthian scripture is talking about idols.
Yeah, so this is a syncretism situation here. This is a golden calf situation. This is a Christmas situation.
Yep.
So,
and humankind really wants to do this for some reason.
Right. Don't put your sacrifice of unclean animals on the holy altar, right? Which is, what's the temple now? Our bodies. So don't be smearing that pig grease all over the temple, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. Or it becomes the desolation of the temple all over again.
Right.
With Antiochus Epiphanes.
Yep, exactly.
But at your own hands.
Yep.
So moving on, when the fire of God is lit in you, it burns away the excess and leaves ash behind. Cleaning out the ash is like grace. Ash is what was used in ancient soaps to make one clean.
And I see a lot of people, if you watch a lot of homesteady kind of things, people are going back to the whole soaps made with ashes and lye and stuff like that. So it's pretty interesting.
So, Jake, how is cleaning out the ash?
I was going to ask you that. Grace. Why don't you explain it? I explained the other couple verses.
So cleaning out the ash is like grace. Remove it, it's taking it away. That act of taking the impurity away, in essence.
Right.
The rubbish,
so when I
out
first
the trash.
saw how you put this, I was like, well, it burns away and leaves ash behind. It's like, well, that's not good. You don't want to leave a bunch of ash behind.
It makes it manageable.
Yeah.
So you think about, the purpose of burning, why do we pile up a big pile of logs or whatever we're burning? It makes it easy to manage, makes it go from 6 foot tall to, about 1 foot tall when you're done.
Yeah.
And you can easily manage that. And it's the same concept, it makes it easy to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of this, you break everything down to its basis components. And then, yeah.
And then,
so you got some fancy writing on this one.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Hard to read. The old linen garments were used to make wicks for the menorah. Have you ever heard that concept before?
I just recently heard this comment, but I hadn't heard it before, I don't think.
Yeah.
At least not that it stuck. But that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So And that's about all there is in this week, week 25. Anything else you want to add here, Jake?
No, I think we rambled on about that stuff quite
Okay.
well, right?
Yep, it's only a couple of chapters really there, and so we encourage you to read it if you've never read it, and check it out yourself. And um, if you're interested in this comment, please comment below and give us like 5 shofars. That would
Five
really make our
shofars,
day.
right?
So a 5 shofar review. And like, comment, subscribe, Google us for more information. And that's about all I have to say. This is Matt and
Jake.
signing off.